All right, welcome to the Coder Kids podcast. I'm James Thornock, as always, your host. And today on the podcast, we are going to be talking about technology and education, specifically an app. And we have a special guest, and his name is Moshe Fried. He is a social worker who had an interest in technology and somehow wanted to solve a problem that he saw in the educational system. So we're going to talk about that today. The name of the app is ClasStars, and you can find that in the Android and iOS stores, and then also on his website, classstars.com. Is that the proper URL?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Sure.
perfect.
It's
Well,
also on
welcome.
it's also on the Microsoft App Store.
Oh, wow. Okay, good.
Yeah.
I never use that thing, but if somebody does, great. I try to avoid that store if at all possible. Oh goodness, I'm a little old fashioned. I just like to download it directly from the host or the website. But well, we start a lot of these off. We have a lot of guests who are like either focused on technology exclusively or on education. You happen to be doing kind of both, so I'll ask you a couple of kind of questions, and you can kind of decide whatever direction you want to take this in. But what got you interested in social work, and then technology, and then education, so you can have the lay of the land wherever you'd like to go?
So it's a great question. I was always fascinated by technology. Back when I was a kid and we got our first computer,
Mm-hmm.
Compaq Presario 200 or something like that. It came with a hard drive that had 200 megabytes of RAM and I think 2 megabytes of RAM and a hard drive of 200 megabytes. Didn't even have a CD-ROM.
Wow. Yeah.
Back in the day, yeah. And it was just so fascinating to me what you can do with technology. At that time, there was no multimedia. Video was like a real novelty. Real novelty. I remember a year or so after we got the computer, we got this external CD-ROM drive. Didn't even fit in the computer because the way Compaq made them, there wasn't really too much room for expandability. And so we had to get an external drive, and we got a sound card, and we were able to play music and watch videos that were on the CD-ROM. You get these 10-second video clips. It's really funny because today, obviously, it's exploded. But it
Yeah.
fascinated me back then. And back then, I felt like this is something that I would want to do. This is interesting. There's a lot of possibility here. Literally the sky is the limit. Wherever your imagination can take you, you can put it on a computer screen. So I thought that was really amazing. But then, as I was getting older, I was more drawn towards social work because I'm a people's person. I like working with people. And I went to grad school, got a degree in social work, a master's in social work, and I wanted to start a private practice. Now, the challenge in establishing a private practice in social work is because of the confidentiality. People
Okay.
are not really talking about their therapist. It's a lot better today than it was. When I started about 15 years ago, there was more stigma than there is today. Thankfully, we're overcoming that, and it's a lot more accepted for people to get the help that they need, which is really, really important.
Yeah.
But I just felt that the best way for me to develop a reputation for myself is by working in schools, because there, in front of a bunch of people, there are teachers, there are school administrators, there are parents, and a teacher can recommend me to a parent after seeing my work with one of their students. So I just thought that was an organic way of developing a reputation for myself that can lead me into a private practice.
And
So
teachers
that's why,
chat with each other. Sorry to interrupt you. Like teachers chat with each other like crazy because
yeah, yeah, for
there's
sure.
a as a former teacher, I actually consider myself still a teacher, but just not a public school teacher anymore. But in the public school setting, you'd have conversations with your students, and then for some real topics, you'd have to talk to people that you're roughly your same age. So there's all kinds of this chatter, and then teachers rely on each other a lot. In my experience, it's different probably by the school, but I think there's this understanding that you can reach out to other instructors to like, hey, I need help with this or this or this. Like, what would you recommend here? You know, this kid is, you know, and he could use some help. You know, do you have any resources? So yeah, I mean, how did it go? I guess so you're trying to found this private practice.
Yeah, it went well. It actually went really, really well. But when I started working with teachers and kids, I started to notice that teachers were very overwhelmed and overburdened. And anytime there was a problem, it was always the teacher's job to solve the problem, even when it was really not practical to expect them to solve this problem. I mean, they're already given so much work to do. They have to teach a lesson. They have to manage a class of however many kids in the class, and obviously that varies from school to school, from classroom to classroom. But they are given a full plate to start, and then things kind of develop, and more jobs come on, and they just get overwhelmed. And what happens is that the kids are the ones who lose out the most. Because the way the human brain works is when we focus on one thing, it's to the exclusion of everything else. When you get really, really engrossed in a good book or a good video, you won't even hear things that are happening in the room because your mind is just so focused on the task at hand. And there's actually an interesting study that was done called The Invisible Gorilla, where they really demonstrated this very, very well. They shot a video with 6 people. 3 of the people were wearing white shirts, 3 of the people were wearing black shirts. And each of these teams had a basketball, and they mingled with each other, and they would pass the ball to one another, but only on the same team. Only the people, all the people with the white shirts only passed the people with white shirts, and people with black shirts only passed their teammates with the black shirts. In the middle of this video, it runs about 45 seconds, a person in a gorilla suit walks into the center of the screen,
dances around.
Yeah, and walks off. And they showed this video to people, and 50%. Now, here's the thing. Before you started watching the video, you were asked to count how many times the players wearing white passed the ball. Okay, so now you're focused on a task. You're looking specifically at the players with the white shirts, and they're passing the ball, and you're counting that. In the middle, this gorilla comes on and walks off. 50% of people did not see the gorilla. So, I was thinking about how that applies in a classroom. When a teacher's attention is drawn in so many different directions, inevitably some kids are overlooked. And the next thing that I realized was, by the time kids were brought to my attention, it was super late in the game. They had been struggling for a very long time. Most of these kids were not struggling just for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. In many cases, it was a couple of years. And in a child's life, a few years is a really, really long time. And I was thinking, this is not right. This just doesn't make any sense. So the question became, can we develop something that draws the teacher's attention to the students who need it the most? Okay, that was really what I was looking at. And even more than that, there is some research that suggests that ignoring kids' effort, like we all know that if you destroy somebody's effort, they get discouraged very quickly. Like if a kid would ever hand in a paper and the teacher would just like rip it up in front of the whole class, or even not in front of the whole class, even privately, just let the kid know, like, listen, this is terrible, I'm tearing it up. No teacher would ever do that. I mean, that would be super discouraging. If you're doing that, you don't belong. You should be selling fruit. Don't work with kids. No offense to the people selling fruit, we need them. But you're not working with kids. So there's research that suggests that ignoring kids' efforts is almost as discouraging as destroying their work. And the problem is that not noticing them on purpose or accidentally is the same to the kid. In either case, they're being ignored. So for me, it was, we've got to draw the teacher's attention to the right kids at the right time. And it's something that is dynamic. It's something that's constantly shifting. And this is what I was thinking of. Now, I was really, really fascinated by Steve Jobs. Really, really fascinated by him. I was following him, while he was alive, when he would do these announcements. He was just so magical on stage, and his understanding of technology was so profound. I don't know anybody else that explained technology as well as he did. And the way he explained it I had gotten a hold, after he passed away, there was this recording going around of this talk that he had given. I think it was in 1983 or 1984. And this was when the personal computer first came out, and he was describing this. And I actually read about it in his biography, and I think it even made it into that movie that they made about him. I think this piece made it into that movie, where he described what is a computer. And he said the best way that he can describe the computer is like this. He said when he was a kid, he read an article in Scientific American that did a study about the efficiency of locomotion in different species. How efficiently they can get from point A to point B. And they tested out many, many different species. The condor, big bird, one, that can cover a distance with the least effort. It was amazing. Human beings came down about a third of the list, which is pretty sad considering that we are the crown jewel of creation, as he says it. He said, but thankfully someone at Scientific American had the good sense to also test man on a bicycle. And man on a bicycle far outbeat the condor. And he said the takeaway was that on our own, we're not the most efficient creatures, but we have the ability to create tools that can amplify our capabilities. And he says the computer is a bicycle for the mind. He said there are some programs that were made on computers in the early days that were just a little bit better than what we were able to do with a pen and paper or, another way. But when VisiCalc, which was the first spreadsheet, Excel is the, Google Sheets, VisiCalc was the first spreadsheet. You were able to do computations on VisiCalc that you couldn't do without a computer. And that's when the computer really took off. So, I always think of it in these terms. What kind of problem are we trying to solve that a computer can amplify our capabilities? So in our minds, we're trying to shift from one kid to the next, giving them the right encouragement, the right support that they need. But inevitably, some kids are left behind. And in the beginning, it's not noticeable. And then it becomes noticeable, and then they go for help, and that's where I come in. But that's already too late. We need something that's, identifying these kids sooner, preferably in real time, so that the teachers can just nip it in the bud. Just deal with it and work with it when it's such a minor problem that they can handle it on their own if they can see it. So it's kind of like putting things under a microscope. It's kind of like putting behavior problems under a microscope, putting motivational problems under a microscope, classroom engagement under a microscope. And it's allowing teachers to really see who are they engaging, who are they, holding accountable for misbehavior, who are they not holding accountable for misbehavior. And it works in a really simple way. The layout of the classroom, and I don't know if your podcast is good for visual. We can do a quick screen share. Does that work?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so let's bring it on. How do we do this here? Let's share your screen.
Yep, it's right there when you mouse over the middle.
It is not giving me that option to take that screen. That's weird. Let's cancel that.
So it should give you application options or like literal screen options. So in the middle there. I did want to make a comment really quick. The gorilla study is pretty wild. It's been replicated a few times as far as I know, and it's wild. Like, you watch this video, and I didn't see the gorilla at first. Obviously I did on the second. You can just search it up on YouTube. But it's like embarrassing almost when like there's this, and the gorilla is in the center frame, like it's in the very center, and it's just gone. It's just anyway. So go ahead.
Can you see that? Is that coming out clear by you?
Oh yeah, it's crystal clear.
So this is the ClasStars demo class. When you download this, by the way, it's free, and I've even had some parents download it and just play around with it with their own kids just to see how they're interacting with their kids. It's really neat. So this is the demo class, and everything is meant to use with a touch screen, obviously. So it's a lot easier with your finger to swipe up and down. Steve Jobs was not into the stylus when the iPad first came out. He said, "Who needs a stylus? We've got 10 of them attached to our hand." So to start a class, you tap on the apple here, and you can title the class if you'd like, or you can just start the session straight away. And the first thing that we do when we start a class, obviously, is to take attendance, because it's important to know who's there. And this layout can actually be customized to reflect the classroom. However the actual classroom is set up, that's how we set up the screen here. And everyone is assumed to be here. The kids that are absent, to mark them absent, you just tap on them and their picture will fade and they get this little A. So it's really quick, really simple. You can mark a couple of kids absent if they are absent. And then when you're done, you tap the button on the bottom right that says end attendance. And then we give you the choice to check homework, go to class, or continue with attendance. So we'll go to class. Now, if a student comes in late, you double tap on the student. And then you get this pop-up wheel that allows you to either mark the student late, or if you made a mistake, you can mark them not absent. But when you mark them late, not only will their picture fade and the A turns into an L, but it's time-stamped. So we know if the student came 2 minutes late, 10 minutes late, an hour late, all of that is not the same. And it's really important to know that, because you've got to be able to identify the progress that kids are making. And when kids who are used to coming 20 minutes late are now only coming 10 minutes late, that's progress that needs to be encouraged. If teachers don't encourage that progress, the kids will give up again. It goes back to when you ignore somebody's progress, they're discouraged. So it's kind of like a different framework, because a lot of teachers use a point system to motivate kids. The problem is that the point system doesn't work for a lot of kids. So what I ask teachers to do is forget about the point system, because the kids that are not able to earn those points, they're being left behind. Every child should get encouragement, positive feedback every day. They're entitled to that. That's something that they deserve. They should not have to earn that. So anytime a teacher gives a kid some kind of positive feedback, which means specific to the child, making eye contact with the child, calling the child by their name, and telling them something positive about themselves, the teacher just needs to swipe up. And just like that, they recorded that they gave that child positive feedback, and it's timestamped, so you know when. You can see when kids are responding better to positive feedback. Some kids need it in the beginning of the day. Some kids don't need it right away, but they need it more towards the end of the day, just to encourage them to get them further. And as the teacher is teaching, they can just swipe up on the kids as they're going. And you'll notice that every time I swipe up on a kid, there's this little this green meter here that goes up with every swipe. That keeps the last 2 days of positive feedback. So a teacher can look at this screen and instantly identify the kids that have not gotten any positive feedback over the last 2 days and prioritize them for encouragement. So the teacher
Valentine's
goes around.
left out. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So this way, there are no invisible gorillas in the room. They're all seen, and it doesn't have to be done all at once. You're not going to get to everybody all at once. So you get to a couple of them. Later in the day, you look and you see you haven't gotten to Bobby, you haven't gotten to Sitara, you haven't gotten to Davy, and now you've gotten to everyone, right? Everyone's gotten. So now you're going to just prioritize the kids that have gotten the least, because Jess has gotten more, Kristen has gotten more. So you'll prioritize those kids. Now, another thing that you're going to do is when kids are misbehaving, and this can be a whole discussion for itself of how we track misbehavior and measure progress on misbehavior. But the key is to count the number of times that a child is misbehaving. Because most of the time when kids are misbehaving, it's because they're reaching out for help. It's because something is not right. They need help with something. And teachers typically will ignore misbehavior if it's mild enough, if it's not too disturbing. The problem is you're not addressing the issues, the needs of the child. So what we tell teachers to do is you don't need to actually respond to the child, but if a child misbehaves, just swipe down on them. And this way you recorded that they misbehaved at that time. You have a record for it. You can also rate on a 5-point scale here on the bottom left how disruptive the behavior was. So it's really quick, really simple to record. And we have amazing dashboards and charts that allow teachers to see the trends of positive feedback with the kids, misbehaviors with the kids. Are things getting better? Are things getting worse? When are kids misbehaving? Because everything is time-stamped. Sometimes kids misbehave during transition time. Sometimes they just need a snack. They're hungry the same time of the day. Every day, it's a half hour before lunch, they just start to lose it. So you can see all of those trends in the dashboards and charts. But one of the really neat things is the research that came out of the Gottman Institute. They actually study relationships, and they can watch a couple discuss a disagreement for 3 minutes and with over 90% accuracy predict if the couple will still be together in 10 years. And the coolest thing about it is that it's so simple that in a minute you'll be able to do it too. They simply count the number of compliments and criticisms that are given. And what they found is that couples with a strong relationship, even when they argue, will still give 5 compliments to every criticism. And couples in a weak relationship will only give 0.8 compliments to every criticism. So there's a huge disparity in the ratio of compliments to criticisms depending on the quality of the relationship. And it's a two-way street. If there's a good relationship, you'll find more good things to say. But also, the more good things you find to say, the more biased you become towards the good.
Yeah.
Right? If you're only noticing negative things, you become biased in a negative way. Now, I was thinking about how that plays out in a classroom. Just like there's so many invisible gorillas in the classroom, are the kids that are struggling getting criticized for their struggles, getting enough positive feedback to have a chance to have a positive relationship with the teacher? In many cases, they're not. So the border color, if you'll notice, some of these kids have orange borders around themselves. Some of them have yellow. The border colors actually reflect the ratio of up swipes to down swipes. So when a student has more swipe downs than swipe ups, if a student has been reprimanded or noticed for misbehavior more than they've gotten positive feedback, they'll actually have a red border around them. And that's not to penalize the child. That's not to deduct points from the child or anything like that. That is a reminder for the teacher to catch this child being good. Give them encouragement, give them support. And as you swipe up on the kid giving them positive feedback, when it gets back to a neutral ratio, 1-to-1 or better, the border color turns from red to orange. So you know that that child is at least in neutral, territory. The kids with the red borders need to be prioritized above all once everybody's gotten them. We never want anybody to be ignored for an entire day. So the green meter is really important. That's tier 1. Everyone needs to be seen and heard and acknowledged. But once everyone is, now you need to prioritize the kids that are struggling. They need more support. So we prioritize the kids with the red borders. Once they get to an orange border, they're the next level of priority. And when the ratio gets to 3-to-1, because there are some studies that suggest that that's a significant ratio, the border color turns yellow. And it turns blue at 5-to-1 and 7 at green-to-1. These different ratios are ratios that we found some research that seems to suggest that there might be significance to them. So we pick those to prioritize. But as we go on and we collect more data, we'll have a much better idea of which types of kids need different ratios of positive to negative feedback. So the idea here is that this tool, number one, makes it super simple for teachers to keep track of who they're interacting with and how. And number two, it helps teachers identify the students that need their attention the most based on the simple framework. Make sure that every kid gets encouragement, and the kids that are struggling need to be prioritized. There's a lot more that I can go into here, but that's ClasStars in a nutshell. Mm-hmm. It's free to download. And we specifically designed it to be very simple. The screen doesn't really have that much on it. It's just pictures of the kids smiling, a 2-day meter, and a border color. So it's color-coded. It jumps out at you. The brain processes color-coded and images much faster than it processes text. So we really designed it to have the least strain on the mind of the teacher so that the teacher can focus on all the other things that they need to do.
Yeah, and that's right. I think nurses and teachers are among the professions where the most number of decisions have to be made in a day. Yeah. And I feel like maybe what I currently do is also included in that. When you have an expansive list of things you could do, but then you have to decide. The thing that complicates teaching, for those parents who may be less familiar with the profession, is like you have to read every single child's face in the room and kind of do a mood check with them. And you got to do that basically every 5 minutes for 7 hours, unless you have an off or a study period or something like that where it's a little bit more autonomous. So
Right. Well, that's
like,
the thing. The thing is that the kids that need to be prioritized for attention changes as you're giving them attention,
oh
right? Because
yeah,
let's say you
yeah.
identify the number one kid that needs attention, then you give it to them. So they're no longer number one. They just got it.
Hmm.
It's funny that I heard this years ago on the shampoo bottle. If you read the instructions, I don't know if they still do this, but they used to do this. They would write directions, right? As if you need directions on how to wash your hair. Lather, rinse, repeat, right? The last time you need to wash your hair is immediately after you just washed your hair, right? So there's no sense in repeating once you wash your hair, right? Once you do it, you're good. Hopefully, if you need to wash your hair after you wash your hair, then you need new shampoo anyway. That's a different story. We can do another
Then
podcast.
it doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're giving kids attention, you think of it as, oh, this is the kid that needs the most attention. So then you give them the attention. Now there's someone else who needs your attention. So you've got to be able to shift. And good teachers can do this naturally. But like Steve Jobs said, this is a bicycle for the mind. This takes the good teachers who could do this naturally and allows them to do it far beyond the way the condor, covers ground, far more efficiently.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I do have a couple questions for you about technology more specifically and education more specifically. Say there's, part of the service that we're trying to provide parents here at Coder Kids Podcast is to, really like pull back the curtain on what actually working in the tech field is like, and what working with developers is like, and then what being a developer is like. So do you have a team that created this, or did you create it yourself? A lot of the stuff you talk about is being research based. How did the app actually get coded and then put on all of these app stores?
So when I was younger, I really could have used you guys, coder.
I could have
Great.
used us too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I
yeah.
think we all could have.
So, and I got to go in a couple of minutes. I didn't realize
Sure.
we're on a time change. So
Oh, okay.
again, yeah, because I'm an hour ahead. But we can do this again. We can continue the conversation and put it together. When I first had the idea, and there's more to the story. I remember watching somebody play Subway Surfer, and I was thinking like they're
Mm.
swiping up and down and back and forth with such precision. Like if you're a second
And it's
off, you're
quick
out.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So like that was the idea. Like just quick swipes up and down, right and left, four directional, and there's other functionality for swiping right and left as well. So that was the idea. I knew I wanted to make an app, and I knew it would be on a touch screen. And I went to the library and I got App Developers for Dummies. I got that
Yeah.
book out, and I figured, I'm a dummy. I can, if it's, if they can write an App Developers for Dummy, that's good enough for me. And so I read 2 pages of that, and I realized, no, this is not happening. So I put it down, and I started speaking to people who had experience in app development. And I approached my uncle, actually, my father's brother, who at that time had been developing for about 25 years for a bank. He worked for a bank, and I told him the idea, and he said, people come to me all the time with ideas for apps, and most of them don't even make sense, but this actually makes sense.
Well, sounds great. We'll put all your contact info in, as well as the URLs in the show notes. So if you're interested in learning more or downloading it for free and trying it out. Thank you so much again for joining us, and I hope that it works out for you.
Awesome.
All right, thanks, Moshe.
Take care. All the best. Have a great day.